Okay, we'll go ahead and call Senate, Fed, and State to order. Thursday, February 10th. First thing up is bill introductions. Go ahead, Mr. Green.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Senate, Fed, and State Committee. My name is Steve Green. I'd like to introduce a bill on behalf of Opportunity Solutions Project. It is RS number 3057, and it enacts the Protect Home-Based Work Act.
Any questions? Any objections? Bill's introduced. Thank you. Senator Bowers?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a transportation bill with the permission of the transportation chairman. We did not have a chance to meet at the rails, so I would like to introduce it in here, if that's all right. And it's an act concerning motor vehicles. It's a distinguished license plate for Down syndrome.
You have an RS number?
I do, and it's 2923.
Okay. Any questions? Any objections? It's introduced. Thank you.
And may I introduce? Yes. So out in the hallway, you see about 300 kids from across Kansas. It's the JAG program. So I have the JAG students from Beloit High School, from Mitchell County, and Senate District 36. So, and their advisor.
Good group of kids.
So they're watching us work in government today.
Well, thanks for coming.
So thank you.
Do we have any further bill introductions? Any further bill introductions? Does the committee have any? Not seeing any, we'll move on to our regular agenda. First thing is a hearing on Senate Bill 388. Jason, can you give us an overview?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 388 amends one statute that governs the marking and return of advance voting ballots. These are the ballots that are sent out by the county election offices to register voters prior to election day so that they can be completed and returned before election day, often referred to as mailed-in ballots. The statute currently provides that the voter or the person delivering the ballot on behalf of the voter can return that ballot in person or by mail without any further specificity. Senate Bill 388 would amend that provision at subsection G in the statute to require that the voter or the person delivering the ballot on behalf of a voter return the ballot either in person or by mailing it specifically through the United States Postal Service. The amendment would go into effect on July 1st of this year if it's enacted, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Okay, any questions? Senator Fasco-Doe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wore my mask for Senator Hildebrand. It says vote on it. And so just for clarification, though, you're saying as opposed to delivering it by hand in person, then, and I know we put some, like if somebody else, so many people, your family members or whomever could deliver that for you and they'd have to kind of have an affidavit signed to do it. But are you saying that now with this bill, it would change it to whereas you couldn't deliver in person, you'd have to mail it through the United States Postal Service?
No, hand delivery in person would still be permissible. What the bill does is it changes a may to a shall to require the voter to return either in person or mail by United States Postal Service. Those would be their only two options. It also clarifies that the mailing of the ballot would be through the U.S. Postal Service. Current law is silent as to the carrier that you would mail the ballot back through. Presumably, it would be the United States Postal Service. The bill would clarify and specify that that would be the carrier.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask the sponsor of the bill a question?
You're going to be able to ask a lot of questions soon.
Okay, thank you. I'll yield and reserve that time then. Thank you.
Any other questions for our reviser? Not seeing any, thank you. Senator Hildebrand, you're first up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank you for hearing this bill in committee. Members, thank you for listening and allowing me to speak today. You have my written testimony. I'm just going to touch a little bit on it. And there's a lot of misunderstanding about this bill and what the intent of this bill is. It does not ban drop boxes like you probably heard. A drop box can still be used, but you will still have a election official at that drop box manning that drop box. And so for those of you that have the understanding that drop boxes are removed from this, it is not. You can still have it, but it has to be manned by an election official. Why do this? There's a couple reasons, and probably our Secretary of State put it best when he was speaking to the House the other day. And I'm quoting from an article in the Sunflower State Journal. The last thing I need is a county getting sued because their county's security isn't like the county's security, like this county's security, he said. If we could put in a baseline of security, that would be helpful, he said. We would like to set standards so everybody's handling is the same. And he's talking about drop boxes. And what this bill does, it sets that baseline that if you're going to have a drop box in your county as an election official, it will be manned. Why would we man a drop box? I don't have this in my testimony, but I will forward it to anybody that wants it. In the Boston Globe, there was an incident set off concerns across the state. And Farmington police are guarding the city's 2 ballot boxes 24 hours a day. Galvin has directed election officials across the state to pick up the pace and empty ballot boxes more often and consider bringing them indoors on Halloween in case of pranks because their ballot boxes were being vandalized. In a USA Today article, a ballot drop box in California was set on fire Sunday night, which may have destroyed up to 100 ballots 2 weeks before the November 3rd election. In San Bernardino County Registrar of Voters is encouraging voters who deposit a ballot at the location before Thursday, August 19th, to confirm the Register of Voters received their ballot. One undamaged mail ballot was recovered from the ballot drop box after the vandalism was discovered, and they do not know how many other ballots were in there. From the Seattle Times, a drive-up ballot drop box at King County Election Headquarters in Tukwila was vandalized sometime early Wednesday while ballots were still inside. Election officials said the metal cover plate at the top of the deposit chute, which is sealed at the conclusion of the election, had been removed from the unit. The drop box still contained 860 ballots. All of these boxes were vandalized with fires. If they were manned, those drop boxes and those ballots would be preserved, and each legally cast ballot would have been counted. And in those instances, there's no way of knowing if those ballots were counted. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I will gladly stand for questions.
Questions? Senator Pescado, you were, okay, Senator Reichman?
Oh, no. Thank you, and I apologize for being a little bit late, so I didn't hear the advisors. I don't even know if ballot boxes are, if we really need them. I don't want to go there right now. But my question would be, how in the world are they going to pay for, to man these, the cost it's going to be for the local people to, have this? I understand the security. I saw a lot of that on TV and what was on there, and people are dropping them off. It wasn't the security as much as other ones. But I just think the cost would be so overwhelming for the local people to physically man that. That's my biggest concern with it. Thank you.
Senator Hildebrand, you have a
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's nothing that mandates a county election office has to have a ballot box, but if they're going to opt into having a ballot box, drop box, then that's when they would have that. So they would need to consider that as an expense to protect those ballots, to ensure that every legally vote cast is counted.
Okay, Senator Schwab.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Along those same lines, when an advance ballot is requested, it obviously costs the county to mail that ballot to the voter. Is there an envelope that is postage paid already included with that ballot? Or is the voter required to put postage on that envelope to return it?
That, I do not have the answer. I think it varies by county. I could be wrong, but I think it varies by county.
And, I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
Mr. Chairman, so in some counties, like in Shawnee County, they do, because of Vicki Smith, our insurance commissioner now, in Shawnee County, they mail that envelope already with the postage on it, but in Sedgwick County, they don't. So it just depends on that county.
Andrew, why don't we look and see which counties have what, and get that for the committee? I think that'd be important. Senator Straub, you got a follow-up?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was my impression that some counties do, because I'm pretty sure that Barton County does send a postage paid envelope when that advance ballot is requested. So I absolutely support this bill, also because the United States Postal Service, any mishandling of mail would be considered a federal offense. I don't know what the regulations are for other mail handling services. I'm not to pick on any one of them, but UPS, FedEx, any of the others. I don't know that they would be held under the same federal regulations for mishandling that our United States Postal Service is. So I absolutely support this legislation. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Fasquedo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Hildebrand, so part of me agrees a little bit with the legislation, but when we talk about the drop boxes, do you think, because, I mean, really, those weren't really used prior to COVID, and so with us, going in a different direction with the pandemic, some of them may not even be needed. So then therefore, would your legislation be needed? And would you agree that the drop boxes, since people were at home and couldn't get out to vote, and so that increased that need for the drop box because of COVID? And if we're going the other way with COVID, do we need this bill?
Okay, Senator Hildebrand.
That's a good question, and I appreciate it, Senator Foscato, but my understanding that there are counties that still want to use drop boxes even if everything is back to normal. So this would put that baseline regulation on there that this is what, so it would be a standard across all counties. But
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Senator Hildebrand. So when you talk about that those boxes be manned by an election worker, are you talking about just standing there the whole 24 hours watching it, or are we talking about a camera, or are we talking about when the ballots are picked up out of the box and delivered to the election office?
So an election official would be manning that box while there are ballots being dropped in it. So whenever a ballot was there, they'd be there to pick it up. It also gives you a little bit of a chain of custody as well. But I have heard that there are counties or election officials that have actually had their drop boxes in their facility, or their actually where you go and vote, where someone could just go and drop it off. That would be the same thing because there's an election official there.
Quick follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Hildebrand. So you said how do you know when a person's getting ready to drop that ballot in there? I mean, because they kind of come and go. I don't know.
The drop box would be locked when it was unmanned. And if the lock is broken,
Senator Hosher?
Yeah, I've got a question. Well, first, I will say, in Johnson County, the envelope comes in the advance ballot, but it is not postage paid. But obviously, it sounds like we're going to have somebody take a look at that. But my question is in regard to only using the Postal Service, which I like the Postal Service, but my question is this: what if you have an elderly couple that maybe they spend somewhere else part of the year, they have their advance ballot mailed to them? Maybe because of where they're located, it doesn't get there until pretty close to the election date. And out of concern of as far as getting it returned, they FedEx it to ensure that it arrives on time, and then they've got a receipt.
Senator Hildebrand?
so why would they not have gotten it in time, I guess would be my question, because they're all mailed out fairly early.
I mean, you can't always assume that mail is delivered in a certain time frame. And again, they would have a receipt as far as from the FedEx showing that it arrived back in time.
You can get that receipt with the U.S. Postal Service as well. You can do second day or next day with the U.S. Postal Service.
May not be open in the evening though, too. I mean, I know that some people do that out of concern to try to make sure it gets back in time so that it's counted. And sometimes there are some services that offer a little bit more flexibility in that regard.
I know in most areas, might not be this way in Johnson County, I can go to a post office before I can go to a FedEx or UPS office. They're a
Well,
lot
I'm
more
talking about they're
accessible.
somewhere else. They live in Johnson County, but maybe because it's winter months, maybe they're in Arizona or something for a couple months.
Florida.
Yeah, it's or Florida.
I still think that's still pretty true. You'll find a post office before you'll find a FedEx or UPS office.
Maybe not the same hours, but yeah.
Further questions? Senator Fasco. Yeah.
So years prior to COVID, we didn't really have this issue. And Senator Hildebrand, do you think we're creating an additional hurdle that would prevent people from casting their vote? I mean, voting is one of our fundamental rights. And this just seems like another confusing hurdle to cast your vote. And have you talked to the election officers in all 105 counties? Well, I won't say all 105, but like in Cedric County, that's a pretty big county of voters just in my district alone. And so have you just got any opinion from election commissioners on if they, support someone kind of, because I still don't understand if it's a person standing there just watching, or is it a video that they can sit and watch people come and go, or how that would even work.
Go ahead, Senator Hildebrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Fasco, I do not believe this is a hurdle for people to vote, and it will alienate voters. And to use that, how many years did we have voting without drop boxes? How many people said that they were denied the right to vote because there was not a drop box? We used them 1 year. So this notion that we're alienating voters if we have someone man a drop box is, there's no evidence there, because evidence in the past is no one was alienated from voting. It would not be a camera, it would be an election official that has sworn an oath to their office would be there to man that drop box.
Senator Cluse, did you have a question, or? Okay. Further questions? Okay, let's go ahead and move on. Oh, I'm sorry. Senator Straub?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just texting the retired county clerk to ask about Barton County, for example, and I know we're working on getting information from other counties. During regular elections, advance ballots do not include a postage-paid envelope, but for mail ballot elections, they do. So I don't know that if that's the same across all 105 counties, but it would be very good to gather that information.
I think, that's something I'd like to see myself. I'm sure some are probably paying and some aren't. Let's just find out what's going on there. So, appreciate it though. Thanks. Not seeing any other questions. We'll move on to the next proponent, Missy Levitt. I believe she's virtual.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Senator Hildebrand for his work on this matter. As such, I offer my full support for this bill as it retains the security of the voter's ballot by specifically mentioning that only the USPS be able to be the proprietary service giver for mailing and returning these ballots. I personally happen to believe that private companies such as FedEx and UPS just give us an extra additional security issue. And quite frankly, I think these should be limited. We already have enough issues as it is. So I fully support that. I would like to add or request an amendment to this bill that state that the mailed or absentee ballots be notarized. I understand that voter selections and voter privacy of the utmost importance. So guidance within that amendment for notaries to refer to would be a welcomed approach as well. So I would also like to ask that the committee revisers verify that the ballot terminology in this bill is sufficient, or if absentee or definitions relatable should be included throughout to remove any misconstruing of what is to be mailed by the USPS or notarized.
Okay. Are you done with your testimony?
Yes, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Senator Fasquedo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, ma'am, for your testimony. Just for clarification, are you saying that that advance ballot be notarized by who? So me, the voter, I've got to now go get it notarized?
Yes, that would be a very simple request. Any bank teller is notarized. You have notaries everywhere. I also checked with how that works for the military, and there are several officers in the military that are notarized. So it's really quite simple to have something notarized. And I just think that that would add a little bit of security, because additionally, the Secretary of State mentioned that if he suspected any fraud were to take place, that it would be in mail-in ballots. So I just think that would be a perspective addition to regulate that based on what the Secretary of State mentioned in the House this week.
Mr. Chairman, Missy Levitt, one size doesn't fit all. And that, for me and people in my district, it is not that simple. It would not be that simple to go to a bank or some of the places you mentioned, because a lot of my constituents don't have vehicles. And so to get somewhere just to get something notarized that, again, I believe that piece, I mean, I could work with some of the other language in this bill, but that piece alone would bring high opposition, because so elderly people that don't drive, that are at home and they get Meals on Wheels, now you're saying they've got to go out somewhere and pay for, because it's not free to get something notarized. Now they've got to find transportation and get there and then pay for it, and they're on set limited incomes. I would oppose, Mr. Chairman, I would oppose this amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Straub.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would actually also oppose this amendment, but for a different reason. Because in our election system, you as the voter are allowed a secret ballot. It is not public information that everyone know how you vote. So with a notarized ballot, it would have your name stamped right on that ballot. What I do support is the security of our elections, and I think that can be done in other ways. I think this bill is a good step to securing how those ballots are returned. We can also be more strict with voter ID and voter registration, but providing a notarized ballot, I think violates your freedom of having a secret ballot. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Oh, Senator Longbine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate the good senator for bringing this bill. I think there are some very useful components to it. I don't know that I have a comfort level that we're getting a better chain of custody from the U.S. Postal Service than we are other mail services. And I'll provide an example of that. Living in Emporia, if I were to take a piece of mail to our Emporia post office, it would then sit in that post office until late that evening. It is then transported across state line to Kansas City, Missouri. It is then postmarked in Kansas City, Missouri. It is then offloaded and sent back to Emporia to a carrier, or sits in the post office and then is dispatched to a carrier who then takes it to the recipient. So I know in the Emporia area, all of our mail goes across state line into Missouri for postmarked. I'm pretty sure that Western Kansas still has most of their mail go to Amarillo. And so I'm not sure that the chain of custody is as strong with the USPS as we think it might be.
Okay. Senator Hildebrand?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It brings up an interesting question. Where does the parcels that are shipped by FedEx and UPS, where's our distribution system? How's it work? I mean, is it all in state? Does it go ship somewhere else, get sorted?
Well,
I mean,
once upon a time, I worked at UPS.
back when you were a youngin'?
Well, you better be pretty young if you're going to work there because they get their money's worth. I don't know how they do it today, but, you know, they got sort facilities in each plant that then sorted to the cities, and it would sort down to the trucks in each city. So, I mean, I'm guessing it would come out of that plant and either go to Topeka, Kansas City, Wichita, Colorado, wherever.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just another comment I would like to add, and I think we can confuse shipping UPS, FedEx, and United States Postal Service. If I just go and put a stamp on an envelope, that's pretty cheap, but I cannot go to United States Postal Service or to the UPS or FedEx and get that same rate. I'm going to pay more to get that tracking number. I can do the same thing at the United States Postal Service, and I'll have the same exact chain of custody as what I have with the United States Postal Service as I do with FedEx and UPS.
Okay. Well, we definitely got more discussion on this bill. Is there anybody else that wants to add anything for this comfrey? Okay, not seeing any. Are there any other proponents that want to speak on the bill? You can step up and give your name. Did you give testimony or?
I submitted a written one.
Okay. What's your name?
Melissa McAllister?
And we're on 388, so that's.
Yes.
Okay. I don't see it here, but make sure Michael has it, okay?
Yes.
I'll let you go for a couple minutes, but we need to move.
I just have two comments.
Go ahead.
I'm from Lyon County. Senator Longbine is our senator. And I thank you so much for letting me speak, and thank you for bringing this bill. I do support this bill. And I'd like to show you that there's an official election mail symbol that I don't believe UPS or FedEx, have, and it says approved by the U.S. Postal Service. And I understand when talking to the Postal Service that when they see this symbol, they accelerate the time that it takes to get it to the election clerk. And I just spoke with them again this morning, and they're very aware of that symbol, and they use it in the expedient of time. We understand that. And then the second thing I'd like to point out, someone mentioned earlier that the terms being used, namely the verbs, and I think that the consistency between bills using the same verbs is a good idea. So, for example, we have seen in the various laws, transmit or deliver. That's KSA 251128G. We see personal delivery, KSA 252437-2C. Transmitted to the county, 251124D. Transmitted by mail, unless, and then it gives the list, 251122E. All advanced voting ballots received by mail, 25-1132. Transmit any voting ballot, and that's 251128C. So we see that we have terms being used across our statutes, and by identifying the need to have these be consistent so that the people, as they are reading these statutes and being governed by these statutes, know the difference in what they're being asked to do. So thank you very much, and thank you for your time.
Any questions real quick? Okay, thank you. We have several written. We'll go ahead and move to the opponents. I don't know if Senator Sykes looks like it's written, unless she wants to speak. I don't see her here. You got it? Go ahead.
I have hers, and she just asked that they be handed out so I can give them to Michael, or just go ahead and hand them out.
Okay, I think we have something here. I don't know. It's on both bills, but,
We're good then.
Rick? Pipo?
Good morning.
Go ahead.
My name is Rick Pifo. I'm the Harvey County Clerk and Chair of the Elections Committee for the Kansas County Clerks and Election Officials Association, KCCEOA. I'm also on the board for KCCEOA. We're submitting, thank you for letting me speak on this. We're submitting neutral testimony. I think the real question on this is, this bill is really just defining what mail means. And defining, and I would argue that mail already means USPS because other private companies are not allowed to deliver letters. Others can do overnight mail or packages. They may look in an envelope, but, and I don't personally read where this means that I have to stand at the drop box, because I would consider that the drop box is an extension of my office. In our county, we have an outdoor drop box at the courthouse. We added one additional one because Secretary of State's office paid for one. It's out in front of a fire station. And we also have a box inside our office that they can come into the building, deposit it in a box. And if early voting is going on, they can also deposit it at the early voting site. So like I said, to me, it still has personal delivery in here, and we would consider that the drop box is personal delivery. If you're saying that basically a person has to be standing there, then there's no point in having a drop box. Just hand it to the person. But is that person going to be comfortable just handing their advance ballot to another person that, without showing credentials and everything else? So I would gladly stand for I would say, as to some of the comments about whether, I don't have the exact numbers. I know you guys are going to look them up. There are some counties that pay postage both ways for regular advance ballots. It's required for mail ballot elections. But some choose to pay it both ways as a convenience for their voters. It's not required by statute. So in my county, we do not pay it both ways. So dropping it in a drop box is a way that they can ensure that we're going to get it in a timely manner, and they can save the postage. And I would also argue that as far as drop boxes are concerned, if they can either drop it in our drop box, like I said, in my office or outdoors, and we've allowed that for years. It wasn't widely advertised, but we've had a drop box at the courthouse for years. And if somebody would call and say, well, I can't make it to the courthouse to drop it off, we'd say, well, you can drop it in the box out by the courthouse and we will retrieve it. So either they drop it in that box and I get it, we check those boxes multiple times throughout the day, or they put a stamp on it and put it in a blue drop box or their box at their house, and then it goes through, like they said, like people have said, a number of different locations, maybe out of state. Ultimately, for us, we have a P.O. box at the post office, so the carrier is dropping it in our drop box at the post office.
Okay.
I'd stand for questions.
Questions, real quick. Senator Fasco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, since 2009, I've served on the Senate Elections Committee, and we're having this hearing in federal and state affairs. I do know for a fact that when at that time, Senator Vicki Smith, advocated for Shawnee County to place a stamp on that return envelope. I advocated for Sedgwick County, but it was up to each individual county commissioners on whether or not they wanted to utilize their funds and pay for that. So it wasn't anything in statute statewide that all counties put a stamp on the return envelope. So that's an issue right there. But we, the legislature, if we want to, we can, just require all the counties to do that. That might help with this legislation. But with your being neutral of what you just shared to kind of help address this issue, what do you think could be a compromise to kind of address both pieces? So you already explained the part about the U.S. Postal and you're saying that UPS and FedEx can't deliver mail. But what would we all want to secure voting and safe voting. We want everybody's votes to count. I don't want anybody blowing up the box with fireworks. And, we don't want those things happening, but we don't want to make it harder for people to cast their vote either. So in your neutral testimony, can you just recommend?
Well, to me, I didn't put anything in here about drop boxes because in my reading, all it was changing the word mail to United States Postal Service, basically defining the word mail. Still allows personal delivery. I would argue that we should allow them to be returned, valid ballots to be returned in any means that they can get it back. I mean, UOCAVA voters could vote by fax and by email. This doesn't even address that. There's whole separate statutes for that. But so I think any means that they can get it back to us, and if they see a need or don't trust the Postal Service and would see a need to expedite that delivery, they could use UPS, FedEx, or United States Postal Service priority mail and pay extra. I mean, either way, it's going to cost them extra.
Okay, I'm going to allow one more quick question, and then we're going to just go through them and then ask questions.
Okay.
Senator Reichman, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mine's just a general question. It was mentioned we never heard of drop boxes until, last time. Now, I don't know who to address this to, but was this a federal law that came down that says we have to have these drop boxes? Then you can add more if you wanted to, because somebody else said that our Secretary of State added some. Can anybody answer that?
As far as I know, there is no federal law allowing or barring them, and there's currently no law in Kansas that allows it or bars them. So it's an interpretation of personal delivery. That's my understanding of it.
I believe our
not a
counsel
lawyer.
for our Secretary of State's here. Do you want to just add, Clay, jump up and there's no statute?
He's a lawyer.
There's no statute that requires drop boxes. Drop boxes have been used in Kansas for about 30 years, though most people didn't realize it. And in the COVID election, because a lot of people didn't want to go to polling places and they didn't trust the Postal Service, I think you all remember that nightmare of back and forth. We asked the counties what they wanted our office to buy with the federal funds that were granted, and the overwhelming demand was we need drop boxes. So we bought them as one order and distributed them to the counties.
Okay. Okay. We're going to go ahead and move on.
Okay.
Next up, and we're going to go through them and then ask questions, and we'll get you moved to the neutral, Rick. Mike Burgess. Okay, can you hand it? Michael, can you hand these out? Oh, they're in the packets? Good. Okay, good.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Mike Burgess, and I'm the Director of Policy and Outreach at the Disability Rights Center of Kansas. On some of these types of issues, I bring a little bit of additional background too. I've been out a while now, but a little more than, I guess, probably 14 years ago now, I was the House Elections Chair and also have worked as a supervising judge here in Shawnee County in a number of different precincts in both the even-yeared elections as well as spring elections. Back then, they were spring elections. So I bring that experience to the table. So one thing I want to bring to the discussion today that I think kind of hasn't, so we often think in terms of our own personal experiences. What's it like for me to return my ballot? An important thing to keep in mind is this law has to work for everyone. So imagine what this would be like for an individual with quadriplegia. They're going to need assistance just to get out of bed, to eat breakfast in the morning, to bathe and toilet, get dressed, all of those things. They may or may not have an assistant in at any given time, and that person may or may not be comfortable or willing to take their ballot on their behalf. So just imagine that. You also have other individuals that may be medically fragile, and so it may be a real challenge for them also to leave the home. And so as you're looking at these things, our organization is very firm. I mean, part of our goal is to advocate for the rights of individuals with disabilities. And so anything that's going to erect a new barrier or make it more difficult for an individual with disabilities to have their vote, to be able to vote and have it counted, that's something, that we want to raise that issue, make you aware when something like that may happen, because, again, that may not be our perspective that, as individuals that we bring to the table. So two things, the may to shall in a few places, as well as the definition of male is essentially what this does. And we do believe that this will create new barriers and make it more difficult for those types of individuals to have their vote cast. And again, I cite an individual example where somebody was out of state receiving care due to an accident, and they were able to have their vote cast using some of those tools that would be more difficult or impossible under this bill. So I'll let you read that example. And also, it's my understanding in talking to a couple of election officials too, that, occasionally, they do an amazing job. I can't say enough and appreciate the partnership that we have done to help raise disability awareness and help make sure that board workers are prepared to help individuals with disabilities be able to vote. But they're human. They do occasionally make a mistake. They miss sending a ballot timely to somebody. And when a human mistake happens, it is important to have all of the tools at the table to be able to do that. And one thing, while Postal Service may be more accessible in a lot of places, the last pickup time becomes a big issue a lot of places. So even though they do offer next day air, if their last pickup is noon and it's 12:05, that there is no next day option at that point. And that's where a FedEx or UPS may have, and I'll relate back to a couple of years ago when the Chiefs were playing in the Super Bowl. I had a family member that's out of state, and they needed to have a Chiefs jersey. And so I had to go, we found one, believe it or not, in a store, but I had to go all over town to try and figure out, okay, how am I going to get this to them in time next day air? And believe it or not, I was able to do it. And but USPS wouldn't have been an option at that point in time when I got the text that I had to get them the Chiefs uniform. So just keep that in mind. That's a lighthearted example. But for individuals who want to have their vote cast, that's a very real thing. It's important to them, and this would remove those options. Also, it was mentioned in a previous conferee too that requiring a notary, we also would oppose that. That is erecting another barrier that would make it example. And there were a number of other folks who spoke about some of the reasons, privacy and other things.
That's not in the.
Yeah, well, no, I understand that, but just, it was discussed during the hearing, so that's why I was responding to. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would be happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time and appreciate the chance to share my perspective.
Thank you, Mike. David Hammett, he's virtual.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yep. Can we do it in a couple minutes, because we got another bill and we got a lot of people to testify, so I want to keep it moving. Don't read from your testimony, just kind of sum it up if you can.
All right, I'll do my best. And so thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Actually, the speed is kind of relevant here because y'all are talking about changing things that impact the most fundamental right of our country. And this should be treated with great caution, with careful deliberation on these things. I've worked on election issues for over 6 years in the state, and it's generally been a policy not to pass anything during an election year that would immediately go into effect. Yet right now I'm trying to dug about bills that are all being heard over the next 2 weeks that impact every single aspect of the election system. So this bill does much, much more than I think anyone in this committee might realize. Whenever it changes the voter may to shall return such voter's ballot by personal delivery to the election office or by mailing the ballot by USPS, that would actually mean that drop boxes wouldn't be possible, even if they were manned, because it would have to be to the election office and you would have to use USPS. And it actually goes farther than that, because any violation of this is a level 9 felony. So for example, if you try to FedEx your ballot, you would actually be committing a crime under this statute because of how it's written. There are a variety of concerns about USPS's delivery time, where people should have a variety of options to return it. There's something called No Mail Tuesdays because of processing delays over the weekend. There's been a lot of processing facilities closed, where about half of Kansas, the ballots actually have to go all the way to Nebraska or Texas before they are processed and then sent back. And a variety of new slower mail processes have been implemented over the last 2 years. Some individuals also just do not trust the government and don't trust the United States Postal Service. They should have options like dropping it off at a secure ballot drop box. I will actually say about manned drop boxes, if you explore that, as a voter in Shawnee County, they actually did that in Shawnee County, and there were a variety of problems I could highlight about that. There was a huge line of cars for it. It's a pretty uncomfortable process how they laid it out. It did not feel super secure to me, actually. But again, before you move forward with this, I know you're trying to move forward on this committee hearing, but there are implications that could violate federal law. You could be opening up the state to a variety of lawsuits. And just from the bills that were passed out last year, there's several ongoing lawsuits and tons of unanswered questions. Just last night, I was getting text messages where people were asking if they're allowed to do this or that, and it's unclear under the last law passed last year. So please do your due diligence on this. And if you do decide to move forward on this, this deserves like a full day hearing and a deep analysis of all these election processes. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Hildebrand wants to respond to something.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just a point of clarification, Mr. Hammett, if you read the bill, there is an R after office, making that officer, not a building, a person. So, thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to Michael Popa. I don't know if that's okay.
Good morning. Michael Popa, Executive Director of Mainstream Coalition, Chair, members of the committee. Thank you very much for allowing me to testify before you today. Mainstream Coalition opposes SB 388, which would limit the return of mail ballots to only U.S. Postal Service. I did submit written testimony, so I will be brief.
Got it.
Just months ago, Secretary of State Schwab called our 2020 elections a success. Right? And he praised the mail ballot system. And this has happened not just a couple months ago, but a couple of times at least since 2020. In 2021, 459,229 advanced ballots were returned. With this bill, SB 388, it would propose to limit the ways that people can return their ballots and exercise their right to vote. We also fear, although thank you, Senator, for clarifying earlier about drop boxes, that this is really setting up a conversation on a bill that you will be having hearing next week, SB 445, which does ban drop boxes. So we are very concerned about that. Again, that's limiting access. You've heard a number of ways already how that can limit access to a person's right to vote. Kansas deserves their right to cast their ballot without unnecessary state government interference. SB 388 is a solution in search of a problem, and as I mentioned before, this was all but implied by Secretary Schwab numerous times, so we do urge you to oppose SB 388. Thank you.
Thank you. Ellen Woods? Is that written? Okay. There's substantial written. Do we have questions? Senator Hildebrand?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not a question, but just a comment. We have heard several times that we cannot limit access to vote at any time. I will remind you that we do not vote 365 days a year. We do have a set limit and a set method, so that is already limiting access to vote. All we're doing is just trying to clarify and make sure that every vote cast that is legally cast is counted. It's voter integrity, not limiting access to vote. Thank you.
Maybe you're getting ready to ask, but I think there is another proponent here to speak.
Who is that?
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. My name is Stacy Nell. I'm the Executive Director of the Kansas African American Affairs Commission. I'm here to provide opponent testimony for Senate Bill 388. I appreciate the discussion that this bill is not actually to ban ballot boxes. I was confused. I actually went back to the bill and read it this morning to make sure that I was here to talk about the correct thing. So I would like to, maybe you were aware yesterday we had the Black Legislative Day at the Capitol. You may have seen several people there. And as you can imagine, access to the ballot and access to voting is something that is near and dear to the African American community. So I'm here to provide testimony to say that we would oppose this bill that would seek to restrict the ways that the ballots can be returned to the voting election office. We talked about this yesterday, so I'm here to provide testimony on behalf of several people who signed this to say that they were in opposition to this bill. We would strongly like to do anything we can to encourage people voting in as many ways as that they can. Anything that would provide an additional hurdle to people casting their votes, even if that's restricting that they can only be done through 2 different channels, is just providing a hurdle to having access to the ballot. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I don't have any written testimony. Did you provide written?
I can hand it in right now.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I mean, it'd be great to actually have that information.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, questions for their opponents. Do we have any other questions? Not seeing any. We do have one more neutral, Caleb Smith. Go ahead, Caleb.
Members of the committee, my name is Caleb Smith. I'm the Inclusive Campaign Director with Kansas Appleseed. Thank you for giving me just a brief moment to provide this neutral testimony on Senate Bill 388. I believe I provided written testimony, so I'll make sure that this is very, very brief. We are providing neutral testimony because this bill, as we understand it, and as it seems to be clarified during discussion today, only really seeks to ensure that advanced voting ballots are returned either by personal delivery or by mail using the United States Postal Service, and does not ban the use of things like ballot boxes, return boxes, and services such as that. So Kansas Appleseed, just to be clear, we believe that Kansas is better off when more people vote, and that's why we do what we do. We encourage more people to vote, especially in areas with lower health outcomes, such as Southeast Kansas, where I live and work. So these drop boxes are an essential tool for helping more people vote, and it's vital for folks who lack access to things like reliable transportation to provide another avenue to avoid election day troubles such as bad weather, long lines at polling places, or just sudden emergencies on election day. But under the language proposed in Senate Bill 388, the personal delivery to the county election officer could be interpreted to mean the only way other than mail to return an advance ballot could be to hand the ballot in person directly to the county election officer. Kansas Appleseed recommends an amendment to the bill, clarifying that this bill does not foreclose the use of return boxes or collection boxes as a means for someone to transmit their advance ballot in a sealed and signed advance ballot envelope. Thank you for your time, and I will stand for the appropriate questions.
Do we have any questions? Not seeing any? Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the hearing on I'm sorry. Senator Hosher?
There were a couple people who indicated they had testimony.
That were neutral?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
They raised their hand a while ago, and I don't think you saw them.
Okay, go ahead, step up. Clay Barker? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Clay Barker, the General Counsel for the Kansas Secretary of State, and we submitted written neutral testimony. 2 points in this bill. First of all, our legal staff reviewed it and concluded this does not affect drop boxes in any way. So if that was the intent, the bill needs to be clarified. The language about personal delivery to the county election officer has always been interpreted. The personal is the voter or the voter's designee, and they can personally take the ballot to the office, to a drop box, or to a polling place into a secure container. And I know there's other bills on drop boxes, so we'll save our position on that. As far as the part about mailing, we're neutral on that. 4 points. One, it's used, but very rarely, UPS or FedEx in Kansas. UPS and FedEx advise not to use it because there's no postmark. The ballot must be inside a ballot envelope when it arrives. No naked ballots are allowed, so the envelope has to be completely filled out. Second point, it's used in time-critical situations. Counties sometimes use it to mail ballots to Kansas voters, and sometimes voters out of state, college students that just didn't get a ballot on time, need it to get it back in time. Third, we're not aware of any security issues with this, and those ballots are given the same rigorous screening as any other mail ballot. And fourth point, it was brought up, is military ballots and citizens overseas, Kansas overseas, will need some sort of exemption because there are places where the Postal Service will not deliver mail or they can't mail it back and they have to use some sort of expedited delivery service. But again, we're neutral on the bright line, FedEx, UPS. We won't take a position on drop boxes because we just didn't read the bill as affecting those today.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Do we have some more neutrals? Go ahead. No? Do we have any other neutrals? Okay. Go ahead. Oh, wait, you got a question for the neutrals. Okay, go ahead. If you're an opponent, we'll open up the opponent side. Did we get your testimony? What's your name?
I'm Seal King with the League of Women Voters. I sent in testimony yesterday morning before 10:30. I think it didn't get in your packet.
Okay.
But there have been a number of features today that we were also addressing. One was that the United States has always accommodated people who are in special situations. So, for instance, in the 17th century, those people who were in Indian country could vote a different way. Some Continental Army soldiers voted in writing. During the Civil War, Union soldiers voted in camps or field hospitals. During World War I, soldiers non-military and those with work-related reason, including railroad employees and traveling salesmen, voted from afar. Industrialization and mobility placed more demand on the absentee ballot. So this has been going on since our beginning, actually before our beginning. And ballot drop boxes or drop boxes for county clerks have been available for decades. The same ones that you might drop your voter registration or vehicle license plate information in. 8 states allow all elections to be conducted by mail. 2 states permit counties to opt into conducting elections by mail. 9 states allow specific mail elections to be, small elections to be conducted by mail, which includes Kansas. And 4 states permit all mail elections for certain small jurisdictions. I've talked to a couple of election officials in the larger counties. They say they do get a number of UPS and FedEx ballots or mailed ballots close to Election Day. And particularly, they might be from those students out of state. Maybe your son or daughter goes to the East Coast to study. Maybe your son or daughter is in the military in another state. Perhaps you have a friend or a neighbor who is fighting fires in Colorado, helping with flood damage in Missouri, or tornado damage or wherever. So all these people need a different way to get their ballot in. And I urge you to vote no on Senate Bill 388. Thank you.
Okay.
And I had copies. Do they?
Yeah, just hand them to Michael. Okay, whoever's in the back, did you provide us with your testimony already?
Yes, I did.
Okay. What's your name?
Eileen Berquist, ACLU of Kansas. I sent in my testimony Tuesday to be oral in person, so apologies if there was a mix-up there.
Okay.
I will be brief. The ACLU of Kansas opposes this bill. People do use UPS and FedEx for their ballots. That was just stated by Clay Barker. Thank you for being here today. And as far as they are concerned, and as far as we have seen, there's been no indications that this is an unsafe method of getting ballots where they need to go. We're really concerned about anything that would limit people's ability to cast their vote. A lot of people have been voting by mail, particularly in the 2020 election. Under current law, if a rural voter can't make it to USPS, they can go to FedEx and Walmart. If someone who is mobility limited, they can get an expedited service at their home. I think that this impacts more people than we know, and we sincerely hope that this will not pass out of committee. Thank you for your time.
There anybody else that wants to testify? Okay. Are there any questions for any of the new conferees? Not seeing any. We're going to close the hearing on 388. We are running a little behind, so I think what I'm going to do is reschedule 389 for a hearing. What do you? There's nothing I can do. We're running behind, and we got things that we have to attend to. We have two budgets. Let's see. Where's the budget guy? Where's our budgets? I can't have you step out because we're tight on people.
It's right here.
So you're gonna have to stay here. Okay, everybody's got the two budgets. We need to, we had the presentation yesterday. I believe the motion would be, let's see, we got the Racing and Gaming Commission. We just approve, what's the motion? Okay, to concur with the governor's recommendation on 22 and 23 of the Racing and Gaming Commission. Do I have a motion for that? Do I have a motion?
So move.
Okay, do I have a second? Senator Reichman makes the second. Any questions or comments? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Against, nay? Passes. Okay, we'll move on, and it'll be the Kansas Lottery. Do I have a motion concurring with the 22 and the 23 governor's recommendation? Do I have a motion? Senator Hosher?
So move.
Okay, makes the motion. Do I have a second? Senator Hildebrand makes the second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against, nay? It's passed. Both them budgets are done. And on Senate Bill 34, do you want to wait until later? Or?
I'm okay with it now.
Okay. Senate Bill 34, we talked about it. Can you pass out them letters on the budget? And this is Senator Hildebrand's bill. Yeah, that from, yep. Can you pass out them letters?
Who made the motion second on that?
Holscher made the motion, second. Hildebrand.
Wait, hold on. What are we doing? Oh, okay.
No, you didn't make the.
I'm like, I don't even know which 134 is right now.
You made the motion to pass it out as amended.
Jason, why don't you give us a little background on 34? And Senator Hildebrand has an amendment. We talked about it. I'll let him explain his fiscal note.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senate Bill 34 was a bill that was heard last session and then taken up this year that would require all rules and regulations adopted by state agencies to expire 5 years from the date of their adoption. I believe earlier this session, there was discussion on a proposed substitute for Senate Bill 34 that instead of sunsetting the regulations, it would require a review every 5 years of those regulations. And so there was a proposed substitute that was distributed to the members of the committee to create new law to do just that, have each agency submit an evaluation of its rules and regulations to the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules and Regulations by July 15th of the year in which the agency is designated to do so. The proposed substitute then provides a schedule for each agency that has adopted rules and regulations and also provides for any new rules and regulations adopted by those agencies or any new agencies that are given rule and reg authority under statute to put them in on a 5-year rotational basis as well. The other part of the proposed substitute was a fast track, so to speak, process for repealing rules and regulations that are no longer necessary for implementation and administration of state law. Under current law, those have to be revoked through the same process as adoption of rules and regs. So it has to be submitted to the AG and to the Joint Committee on Rules and Regulations and then published in the Kansas Register. And then there's a 15-day waiting period. The fast track provision follows somewhat similar, but still a more accelerated pace for that, so that the notice is sent to the Attorney General and to the Joint Committee. There may be a hearing at the Joint Committee if it's requested by the Joint Committee on that revocation notice, but after it's submitted and clears the Attorney General, then it's published in the Kansas Register, and 15 days after that, the regulation would be revoked. And so it's a bit faster process for revocation of those rules and regulations. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason, so that 5-year review, is that in the new bill?
That's the new proposed substitute. It would do a 5-year review rather than a 5-year sunset.
Okay. Okay, and as a member of the Joint Committee on Rules and Regs, so you're saying we would only review if the chairperson requests that during our sometime meetings?
The Joint Committee would receive each report, so it would be about 20 to 24 reports from the agencies for that year in July on whether or not the rules and regs are still necessary for implementation and administration, or those regulations that could be revoked through the fast track process. And then if the chairperson of the Joint Committee decides they want to further review those revoked regulations, they could conduct an additional hearing to review that revocation proposal.
Understand. Thank you. Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Senator Holscher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just curious, and now I think I did finally pull it up. Proponents, opponents to this last year. You said it was last year, right?
It was, the hearing on the original bill was last year, yes.
Okay. And proponents.
Senator Hildebrand might be able to help you answer some of that.
Okay.
Go ahead, Senator Hildebrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And with the 5-year sunset, we had plenty of opposition by the boards that would have to review every 5 years.
Senator Straub.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is probably a question for Senator Hildebrand. Do you think this amendment does enough to clean up the antiquated regulations? Do you think this will solve the problem?
I think it's a good step moving in that direction, yes. I don't know that it will, only time will tell if it will fix it, but it is a good step.
I've been here a long time. I think this is a good process to start looking at some of these and getting them off the books that, stuff that's been here 150 years or 130 years that we don't really need anymore. People needs to be looking at it, and this is a good process.
Do you want a motion at this time?
I would like a motion. Well, wait, Senator Hildebrand has the amendment, so we need a motion on the amendment to adopt the balloon.
And I would like to explain, so when this was introduced, it was a 5-year sunset, and the fiscal note, and Senator Longbine had concerns about the fiscal note with the amendment. It was pretty huge, because agencies didn't like it and they wanted to kill the bill. So the amendment is actually a compromise that was worked out with everybody. The fiscal note now comes back. It's very, very, I think it's 0 or negligible. So, which is very good. And with that, I would ask that my amendment be handed out so we can, everybody has a chance to review it.
Hand out the amendment. Do you have it, or? Oh, yeah, it's right here.
Oh, well, in that case, I would like to make a motion that we make a proposed substitute for Senate Bill number 34 to adopt the balloon.
Okay, got a second? Any questions or comments? Senator Hosher?
Thank you, Chair. I must have missed something there. So you said there was a pretty big fiscal note initially. With this amendment, it goes down to basically nothing. So what changed in there as far as to make that happen? Thank you.
Changing it from a 5-year sunset, so the angst amongst the agencies were then they would have to resubmit that rule and reg if they wanted to keep it. And that's what drove up the fiscal note, was they would actually have to redo the rules and reg and resubmit it to keep it.
And now it's just a review and a fast track if it needs to be removed.
Yep.
Great. Go ahead, Senator Straub.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick comment. Just like the elections issues, if you don't know the rules, it's easy to break them. So our agencies absolutely should be reviewing and updating their rules and regulations periodically anyway. So I'm full support of this bill. Thank you.
Go ahead, Senator Hildebrand.
And if I may, just one of the examples that I gave, I don't remember if it was this one because I had 2 sister bills that were very similar. There's a rules and reg in Kansas Wildlife and Parks that says if you catch a fish, you cannot give that fish to another person.
Okay, Senator Straub.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there's another weird statute on the books that you can't hunt ducks on mules or with mules. I think it was, my daughter had an assignment from a business law class and it was find a funny rule or law.
Sure, there's plenty of them that will be eliminated because of this, and that'll make our revisers have a thinner book, or everybody have a thinner book to look at. And but we're on the amendment, and this is to adopt the balloon. So we have a motion second with no further questions. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Against, nay. Passes. Okay, we have a motion on the balloon. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we pass out substitute for Senate Bill number 34 out favorably for passage.
As amended.
It's not amended because it's a substitute.
Okay, Straub seconds. Questions or comments? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Against, say nay. Passes. And Senator Hildebrand, that's your baby to carry. And just, I want to say a couple of things. I didn't think it was going to take this long today on the first bill, and, as chairman, you try to keep a busy schedule. A lot of things kind of popped up there at the end on these testimonies coming in, and, I really try to be lenient and let everybody testify, but when you get that much testimony on one bill or two bills, it's really hard to organize, two staffers full-time trying to get them in line and all that. And, it's hard to manage that. So people on the outside, you're really getting everything in. Don't bring it the day of. It just really makes it tough. Doing it 10:30 the day before on a bill like this would have made it easier. But we're going to reschedule the second bill. It'll probably be a week out or so. We've got a full busy next week, but the week after that, we'll put it in line. So, thank you. Committee adjourned.